Conservatives are blasting their former colleague, MP Chris d'Entremont, who defected from the party and joined the Liberals, calling him a, quote, coward, and accusing him of betraying his constituents for his own professional ambitions.
Mark Carney's federal Liberal budget approves $141 billion in new spending and is projected to bring with it $78.3 billion.
Freedom Convoy organizer Tamara Lich is returning to court to appeal her mischief conviction to defend Canadians' right to assembly and free expression. Hello, Canada. It's Wednesday, November 5th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Geoff Knight.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Conservatives and their supporters are accusing the House of Commons' latest floor crosser, Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont, of forsaking his constituents and his values in pursuit of his own ambitions. D'Entremont, the MP for Acadie Annapolis in Nova Scotia, announced his resignation from the Conservatives on Tuesday as the Liberal government released its 2025 budget. The Liberal Party released statements from the former Conservative MP announcing that he would be joining the Liberals immediately after the budget was released. This means the government now only needs 2 votes from opposition parties to pass the budget and are 2 MPs shy from a majority. The budget has a $78.3 billion deficit. By Wednesday morning, d'Entremont was attending a press conference with Prime Minister Mark Carney, who immediately lauded him for defecting from the Conservatives and joining his government's caucus.
And I would especially like to thank Chris d'Entremont, the member for Parliament for Acadie Annapolis. I'm honored to welcome him as the newest member of our government caucus.
On CTV's Power Play, Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer said that d'Entremont left the Conservative caucus over, quote, personal grievances for not being elected Deputy Speaker, and noted that his decision is a betrayal of all the people in his riding who campaigned for his election.
I know Mr. d'Entremont has had some personal grievances about the fact that, he didn't get elected Deputy Speaker. He's been kind of upset about that. So I'm disappointed that he let his own personal grievances get in the way of his commitment to his constituents, that he would fight for a more affordable budget to bring down the cost of living, to lower the tax burden on Canadians. But again, he's going to have to explain to all the people that he looked in the eye, took their donations, put signs on their lawns, and then explain why he betrayed them just a few months later.
According to Elections Canada, d'Entremont accepted at least $17,850 from 36 donors to re-elect him as a Conservative MP in the April 2025 federal election. Donations ranged anywhere from $250 to $1,000 from Conservative supporters. Geoff, this has been the big drama on Parliament Hill, and when these sorts of things happen, there's a lot of rumors going around that others could follow. Now, as of recording this, we haven't seen any indication that other Conservative MPs will be crossing. But what are some of the other responses we've seen with relation to d'Entremont's decision to join the Liberals and abandon the Conservatives?
Yeah, Cosmin, Conservatives and their supporters are ripping into Chris d'Entremont's floor-crossing move, calling it everything from a shameless power grab to outright treason against his voters. Former Conservative MP Rick Perkins went nuclear, daring him to resign and trigger a by-election, saying d'Entremont basically admitted he'd lose if an election hit now, and that, quote, there is nothing in his floor-crossing about principles. It was about keeping his job. Sebastian Skamsky, ex-media director for Polyev, labeled it shameful and a betrayal, pointing out how d'Entremont trashed the Liberal budget as generational debt just months ago before jumping ship to advance his own personal ambitions. Michael Barrett hammered the hypocrisy, noting d'Entremont promised to fight for an affordable budget but is now backing the exact opposite. Ginny Roth, who ran Polyev's leadership bid, piled on by calling for a by-election and wondering if this means Liberals are ditching their zero tolerance for pro-life MPs, given d'Entremont's voting record. Grassroots folks are even harsher. One supporter online branded him a despicable example of our species. a traitor and spineless coward who had lost all integrity. It's a full-on revolt, with everyone from caucus to the base feeling stabbed in the back. The Liberal government has finally tabled its budget, projecting a national deficit of $78.3 billion this year, fueled by a massive $38 billion increase in spending. A $38 billion increase in spending to a total of $581 billion. Outside of the pandemic era, Carney's budget deficit is the largest in Canadian history. Total debt is projected to reach $1.35 trillion by the end of this year, increasing to $1.59 trillion in 2029 to 2030. Under the Liberal plan, Canada will pay $55.6 billion in debt interest charges next year, rising to $76.1 billion by 2029-2030. In a statement on Tuesday, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne said, quote, "Budget 2025 is an investment budget. We are making generational investments to meet the moment and ensure our country doesn't just weather this moment, but thrives in it. This is our moment to build Canada strong, and our plan is clear. We will build our economy, protect our country, and empower you to get ahead. When we play to our strengths, we can create more for ourselves that can never be taken away." Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre denounced the plan, saying Carney's government is, quote, "the most expensive in Canadian history," while declaring that the Conservatives would vote against the Liberals. He said, quote, "On behalf of all the Canadians who can no longer afford to eat, heat, or house themselves because of Liberal inflation, we Conservatives cannot support this costly Liberal budget."
Today, the Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else that Canadians buy. And the Prime Minister has broken every single promise he made just 7 short months ago. He promised a $62 billion deficit. He delivered nearly an $80 billion deficit, $16 billion bigger than he promised and twice the size that his predecessor left behind. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio. He raised it, and inflation along with it. He promised to spend less. He's spending $90 billion more, costing $5,400 per family in Canada. And that $90 billion, to the Prime Minister's heckles, is above and beyond the promised $16 billion that he says he will one day find.
Over the next 5 years, the budget allocates $115 billion to infrastructure, $110 billion to productivity and competitiveness, $25 billion to housing, and $30 billion to defense. According to the budget, its 2 fiscal anchors include balancing daily operating spending with revenues by 2028 to 2029 and maintaining a, quote, "declining deficit to GDP ratio to ensure disciplined fiscal management for future generations." So, Cosmin, we've had a couple days with this budget now. What are some of the things that Canadians should know about it?
Yeah, Geoff, there are a few big takeaways that Canadians should be aware of, and a lot of it flies under the radar. I mean, it's a 500-plus page budget, and there's a lot of things jam-packed in there, and it's honestly not clear from first reading what is important and what isn't. But the 2 things that caught my eye was some changes to immigration and also to the industrial carbon tax. First, on immigration, the Liberals are quietly spending almost $140 million on 2 separate programs. And these programs are designed to fast-track refugees, asylum claimants, otherwise known as protected persons, and those holding work permits in a separate program into permanent residency. They're calling this a one-time measure, but let's be honest, because these things rarely stay one time, and when the government introduces major changes to the immigration system, they remain for quite a while before something is done about it. So the plan is to move tens of thousands of people onto the path towards citizenship by granting them permanent residency. And this is supposedly done to reduce the number of temporary residents in Canada. At least that's what the government is claiming. But it's ironic because the government's also planning to bring in over 1 million new temporary workers and students through 2028. So it's a revolving door. I've seen their so-called immigration numbers plan, and some of it doesn't really add up, and I think there's a little bit of fudging the numbers in terms of how many people will actually come in through the next few years. But it doesn't seem like they're actually reducing the numbers. They're just changing labels around to make it seem that the immigration situation is being taken care of. And then there's the carbon tax side of things. So Ottawa wants credit for getting rid of the consumer carbon tax. We all know that Mark Carney campaigned on this, but in reality, they didn't actually get rid of the consumer carbon tax or the Carbon Pricing Act. What they actually did was they just set it to zero, but the legislation still on the books, it's still a law, and it hasn't been voted on or repealed. Meanwhile, the industrial carbon tax is going to go way up from $80 per ton to $170 per ton by 2030. And the feds are going to lock that in for decades. They're even giving themselves new powers to reimpose federal pricing on provinces like Alberta or Saskatchewan, and to make it harder for provinces that dissent to the carbon tax to fight back against hikes. So if a future government tries to roll back those taxes, taxpayers will have to compensate these corporations through what they call carbon contracts. There's a lot more in this budget. I would recommend you guys check out our coverage to see the various angles and aspects that I think are very relevant to Canadians.
Hey, Cian Bexty here. Do you know someone, maybe it's you, who wants to start a career in politics, but can't stand the thought of wasting years and years in a lecture hall while some woke professor drones on about gender studies? Well, we found the perfect alternative. Macquarie College's Applied Politics and Public Affairs program. It's a 2-year evening and online program available all across Canada, where you'll actually learn how to run campaigns, organize movements, and push policy in the right direction. Instead of empty theory, you'll complete 3 practicums. Real-world placements in your community or with the party that you believe in. That's job-ready experience that opens doors straight into politics. And here's the best part. If you apply with code Juno, or simply tell admissions that Juno News sent you, you'll unlock an exclusive $500 scholarship that is exclusive just for our listeners. We're backing this program because we want more of our audience inside the system, making changes from the inside out. With September and January intakes open now, this is your moment. Visit macquariecollege.com or click the link in our show notes to apply.
Tamara Lich will appeal the mischief conviction that arose from her participation in the 2022 Freedom Convoy protest against government mandates during the COVID-19 pandemic. She filed a notice of appeal with the Ontario Court of Appeal on Tuesday. It reads, quote, "The trial judge materially misapprehended the evidence and or made unreasonable findings by failing to give effect to the absence of evidence linking the appellant to mischief committed by others. On the evidence, Lich did not have a truck nor provide any directions or encouragement to vehicles. She did not encourage blocking roads, honking horns, or proliferating diesel fumes at any time or in any way. There was clear and uncontradicted evidence that she did not exert control over all present." The appeal seeks to have her conviction overturned, reaffirming that peaceful protest is not a crime in Canada. Lich will be represented by Lawrence Greenspan and his legal team at Greenspan Granger Hill, and her legal fees will be covered by the Democracy Fund. Greenspan argued that the trial judgment fundamentally misunderstood the evidence and infringed on core charter protections. The Democracy Fund wrote in a press release, quote, "Despite substantial evidence that Ms. Lich consistently encouraged protesters to remain peaceful, lawful, and safe, the Crown failed to establish any direct connection between her actions and the alleged misconduct of others. The conviction rests on an impermissible theory of collective guilt rather than individual responsibility." So these protests took place in 2022. We're almost 4 years out from this. How long has Tamara Lich had to face these charges, go through the courts? And what were some of the key parts of her multi-year battle for her role in participating in the Freedom Convoy?
Yeah, Cosmin, if it feels like Tamara Lich's case has been dragging on forever, it's because it has been. It's been going on since her arrest in February 2022, which was right in the thick of the Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa. So that's over 3.5 years of legal wrangling. Her multi-year battle kicked off with a nightmare of bail fights. She was denied release multiple times, spending weeks in jail before finally getting out on conditions that sparked more appeals. Charges were piling up: mischief, counseling to disobey a court order, and more. But the real grind was the 13-month trial that wrapped up with a guilty verdict on mischief alone in April 2025. Sentencing came down October 7th of this year with an 18-month conditional sentence, which was house arrest for the first year and then curfew, crediting her for pre-trial time served. Throughout, she's leaned on the Democracy Fund for legal support, fought back against what her team calls collective guilt tactics, and turned the ordeal into a rallying cry for protest rights, all while co-defendant Chris Barber navigated a similar path with his own guilty mischief finding. It's been brutal, but her appeal filing this week keeps the fight alive.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.